Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading.
Now we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 26th of February 2019, and the news that would be covered today is given on the screen, and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. And so now with this, let us start with the first article. Now we have taken the lead editorial from page 8. Now what this editorial talks about is that multilateral diplomacy is required so as to make sure that Pakistan ends its support for cross-border terrorism. Now, the reason the author is recommending a multilateral approach is because, as you're already aware, that India, after the Uri attack in 2016, has started a policy of diplomatic isolation of Pakistan. However, according to the author, this policy of diplomatic isolation of Pakistan is currently not working. Now, according to the author, this policy of diplomatic isolation of Pakistan is not working because it is difficult to expect other countries to leave Pakistan, whereby the United States requires Pakistan diplomatically for talks with the Taliban. And similarly, China also needs Pakistan diplomatically for its success in the CPEC project. And similarly, several other countries also require Pakistan diplomatically. And therefore, according to the author, this current policy of diplomatic isolation of Pakistan that began after the Uri attack is currently not working for the Indian government. Now, according to the author, this is a similar problem that the United States is facing with regards to Iran, whereby the Donald Trump administration wants to isolate Iran, and India as a country also understands that Iran does support terrorism through Hezbollah within the state of Israel. However, what is happening is that India needs Iran for oil and gas imports and for the Chabahar port, and therefore this is the main reason as to why India is not agreeing to isolating Iran. And according to the author, this is a similar problem that other countries such as the United States is facing when we ask them to isolate Pakistan. Now, it is within this context that the author has given a prospective solution whereby India can engage in multilateral diplomacy so as to compel Pakistan to end its support for cross-border terrorism. Now, what the author means by this is that other countries such as Iran and Afghanistan, which suffer from Pakistan-based terrorism, can join this coalition that India has built so as to stop Pakistan from sponsoring terrorism. And similarly, major powers such as the United States, UK, France, which are working against terrorism, can be utilized to join such a coalition. And thereby, with the coalition of these countries, India could put pressure on Pakistan so that it stops cross-border terrorism. Now, a major example of this would be the P5+1 coalition, which included the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, which are Russia, United States, China, UK, and France, and the other country in the coalition being Germany, that was formed to isolate Iran and force it to sign the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the Iranian nuclear deal. And similarly, another example would be the recent formation of the Lima Group, which has been formed so as to control the crisis within Venezuela. And it is within the similar context that when the P5+1 countries wanted to isolate Iran and force it to sign the Iranian nuclear deal, what the United States did was form a coalition of the major powers. And in similar terms, the author is recommending that India should build a coalition with other countries, first that suffer from Pakistani-based terrorism such as Iran and Afghanistan, and other major allied powers of India such as the United States, UK, France, Russia, among others. And with the help of this coalition, India could put pressure on Pakistan so as to stop cross-border terrorism. And apart from this, what the author is also recommending that India should work with this global coalition that it has formed in global institutions so as to counter Pakistan. Now, it is within this context that the author is saying that India should work with the global coalition that it has formed and ensure that Pakistan is isolated, such as in the Financial Action Task Force, whereby through the Financial Action Task Force, it could ensure that Pakistan ceases to fund terrorism and cut the global financial links of Pakistani-based terrorist organizations. And similarly, India could work with this coalition in the United Nations Security Council so as to ensure that action is taken against major terrorists like Hafiz Saeed, Masood Azhar, and others. And the last main prospective solution which the author has given that India should attempt to bring Saudi Arabia and China, whom are the main supporters of Pakistan, and through the help of this coalition that India has formed, India can then also put pressure on Saudi Arabia and China so that they put pressure on Pakistan to stop cross-border terrorism. Now, this is the main crux that the author talks about in this editorial. whereby according to the author, the current policy of diplomatic isolation that began after the Uri attack in 2016 is currently not working. And according to the author, the policy of diplomatic isolation of Pakistan is currently not working because it is difficult to expect other countries to leave Pakistan, whereby the United States requires Pakistan diplomatically in talks with the Taliban. Similarly, China requires Pakistan diplomatically for the CPEC project. And therefore, according to the author, it is difficult to expect other countries to join India in diplomatic isolating Pakistan. Whereby, with regards to this, the author has given an example that this is a similar problem that is being faced by the United States, whereby the Donald Trump administration wants to isolate Iran. And within that regard, India also as a country understands that Iran does support terrorism through Hezbollah within the state of Israel. However, what is currently happening is that India needs Iran for oil and gas imports, for the construction of the Chabahar port, and therefore India is not in complete agreement with the United States in isolating Iran. And according to the author, this is a similar problem that other countries are facing when we ask them to isolate Pakistan. And it is within that regard that the author has given various prospective solutions to this problem, whereby the main solution that the author has said that India should build a coalition with other countries. And this coalition could include countries that suffer from Pakistani-based terrorism such as Iran and Afghanistan. And similarly, this coalition could also include major allied countries of India such as the United States, UK, France, Russia and others. And this coalition can be built on the main example of the P5+1 coalition that was formed for the Iranian nuclear deal, whereby the 5 permanent members, which are United States, Russia, France, UK and China, plus with Germany, formed a coalition so as to isolate Iran and put pressure on Iran so as to sign the Iranian nuclear deal. And the P5+1 countries were successful in getting Iran to sign the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And it is within that context that India could also build a coalition so as to stop Pakistan from sponsoring terrorism. And apart from this, India could also work with this coalition in global institutions such as the Financial Action Task Force, whereby through the Financial Action Task Force, India could ensure that Pakistan ceases to fund terrorism and cut the global financial links of Pakistani-based terrorist organizations. And similarly, India could also work in the United Nations Security Council through the coalition so as to ensure action is taken against major terrorists like Hafiz Saeed, Masood Azhar, among others. And the last main prospective solution given by the author is that India should attempt to bring Saudi Arabia and China, who are the main supporters of Pakistan, and get both of these countries to apply pressure on Pakistan to stop cross-border terrorism. Now you should see this article first from the perspective of JS Paper 2 within the section International Relations, and apart from that you should also see this article from the perspective of JS Paper 3 within the section Security. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this editorial from the editorial page on page 8. Now what this article provides are various advantages and the current problems with regards to the e-pharmacy sector. Now you should mainly see this editorial from the perspective of GS Paper 2 within the section Social Justice and within the subsection Issues relating to development and management of social sector services relating to health. Now before understanding as to what are the current advantages and the current problems with regards to the e-pharmacies, let us in simple terms first understand as to what are e-pharmacies. Now e-pharmacies are any registered e-pharma company which can either distribute or offer to sell drugs through the electronic mode. And when we say electronic mode, it can be through websites, apps, and any other form of electronic mode. However, it is to be understood that for a scheduled drug to be sold by an e-pharmacy, the patient needs to submit photographs of the prescriptions which has been given by the doctor while they place orders to buy medicines from e-pharmacies. Now this is a common practice which is also followed by pharmacies, whereby if you have to buy a scheduled drug, we need to show a prescription given by a doctor who has prescribed a scheduled drug. And this is a practice which has also been followed by e-pharmacies, whereby if we want to buy a scheduled drug from e-pharmacies, we have to upload the prescription. Now the first main advantage which has been highlighted by the author with regards to e-pharmacies is that they offer medicines for sale at a discount of at least 20%. Whereby the medicines which are sold by e-pharmacies are almost 20% cheaper as compared to traditional local pharmacies. The second main advantage highlighted by the author is that e-pharmacies deliver medicines directly to the consumer's home. However, you also have to understand that this is also a common practice which is followed by local pharmacies, whereby if you ask them, they also deliver medicines directly to home. The third main advantage, which has been highlighted by the author with regard to e-pharmacies, is that it would end the practice of cartelization, which is currently plaguing the pharma industry. Now, what is currently happening is that there are few competitors within the pharma industries within India. And what is currently happening is that across major cities within India, such as Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, and others, and across various regions of India, the pharma companies are behaving like a cartel. Whereby what is happening is that, let's say, there is a particular drug which cures a particular form of cancer. Now, there may be only two or three companies which are forming this drug. And what all of these three companies would do is fix a common price for this drug. And this process, whereby two or more companies fix a particular price of a particular product and do not allow free market competition, is known as cartelization. And this process of cartelization is banned within India. But what is currently being seen is that the pharma companies regularly indulge in this form of cartelization, whereby what they ensure is that various drugs, various medical equipments, which are high costing, such as cancer drugs, and are produced by a small number of companies, they would fix a very high price of these equipments or these drugs and do not allow any form of free market competition. And this was one of the problems with regards to stents, whereby, as you already understand, the government has fixed the price of stents which are used in heart surgery. Whereby what was earlier happening was that few companies were forming heart stents, and through the process of cartelization, they had fixed a very high price for these heart stents. And because of this, the government of India had to intervene and fix a maximum price on which stents can be sold within India. And this was done so as to ensure that there is no form of cartelization of pharma companies with regards to selling of heart stents. And it is within this context that the author is saying that e-pharmacies can ensure that there is no form of cartelization within the pharma sector, whereby according to the author, e-pharmacies would ensure that there is free market competition within the pharma sector. Now, the fourth main advantage highlighted by the author is that e-pharmacies also end the practice of unofficial license Raj, which currently exists in the pharma sector. Now, what is currently happening is that pharma companies are required to apply for a no objection certificate from Regional Trade Association within the pharma sector, whereby it is only after getting a no objection certificate from the Regional Trade Association within the pharma sector that pharma companies can appoint new stockist of drugs within that particular region and thereby also sell a particular drug within that region. Now, what this does is create an effect of artificially restricting competition within certain markets, because more stockists which are formed by pharma companies means more competition for the pharma shops. And because of this, the Pharma Trade Association wants to restrict the competition which exists. And for restricting this competition, an NOC is provided to pharma companies from the Regional Pharma Trade Association to appoint new stockists and allow them to sell drugs. And according to the author, with the appointment of e-pharmacies, it would end this unofficial practice of license Raj, which are given out by pharma trade associations. And apart from this, these e-pharmacies would also break the artificial restrictions which have been formed by these pharma trade associations. Now, the fifth and the last main advantage highlighted by the author is that electronic trading of medicines via online pharmacies can bring in transparency within the pharma sector. Now, what is currently happening is that a lot of scheduled drugs are being sold by local pharmacies without having any form of prescription. And similarly, there is a lot of fake drugs which are being currently circulated through the local pharmacies. And according to the author, e-pharmacies can ensure transparency within the pharma sector, whereby the uploading of prescription by consumers to buy medicines from e-pharmacies can ensure that scheduled drugs are only sold when there is a prescription to buy scheduled drugs. And similarly, online platforms for e-pharmacies can also ensure that an online database is maintained of the supply chain management of drugs which are being sold, and this can be used to ensure that the fake drugs are kept out of circulation. So now these are the five main advantages which has been highlighted by the author with regard to e-pharmacies. Now, apart from this, let us understand the various problems which have been highlighted by the author with regards to e-pharmacies. Now, the first problem which has been highlighted by the author is that the legal status of e-pharmacies is not yet clear. Now, I had already understood in the Daily News Simplified video of 18th of December as to why the legal status of e-pharmacies is not clear. whereby the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940, which regulates the import, manufacture, distribution, and sale of drugs and cosmetics within India, currently does not prescribe any form of regulation on e-pharmacies. And it is within that context that the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare issued a draft notification to amend the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940 to regulate sale and registration of drugs online, whereby this draft provided for the registration of e-pharmacies by the Central Licensing Authority. However, what is currently happening is that the central government has yet not notified the draft with regards to regulation on e-pharmacies within India. And it was within that context that the Madras High Court banned the online sale of drugs, whereby the Madras High Court has said that the Government of India should first issue regulations with regards to e-pharmacies, and after that, the e-pharmacies would be allowed to sell drugs within India. However, the central government has yet not finalized the draft on regulations regarding e-pharmacies. And therefore, within that context, we'll have to wait and see as to how the Government of India comes out with regulations with regards to e-pharmacies. And therefore, it is within that context that the author is saying that one of the current problems with regards to e-pharmacies is that their legal status is yet not clear. Now, the second main problem with regards to e-pharmacies is that e-pharmacies are being opposed by traditional pharma companies. Now, the main reason as to why e-pharmacies are being opposed by traditional pharmacies is because, according to the traditional pharmacies, they will not be able to compete with the discounts which are being provided by e-pharmacies. Now, this is a common problem which has been highlighted by traditional sectors within India with regards to online platforms, whereby what is happening is that the discounts which are given by e-pharmacies are being subsidized by the venture capital, whereby for a traditional pharmacy to be formed within India, he has to take a loan, and based on this loan, this person would then buy a shop. And apart from this traditional pharmacist would also be putting in his own capital to buy various medicines, drugs, medical equipments from various pharma companies. However, what is happening with e-pharma companies is that some large investor is investing within e-pharmacies, and therefore the person who has actually built the e-pharma portal or the e-pharma app, he's taking in the money of various other investors. And based on this, the e-pharma company can also give various heavy discount to consumers based on the money which has been provided by the venture capitalist. However, within that regard, the traditional pharmacist who has already taken a loan and is already paying with his own capital to stock his own pharmacy, he would not be able to offer the same discount which is then can be offered by e-pharmacies. And this is one of the reasons as to why the traditional pharmacies are opposing e-pharmacies, because they cannot compete with the discounts which is being subsidized by the venture capital which has been given to the e-pharma company. Now, these are the two major problems which has been highlighted by the author with regards to e-pharmacies. So now hopefully you've understood the main crux of this editorial, whereby you understand the advantages and the problems with regards to e-pharmacies. An important aspect that you should also remember is with regards to the legal status of e-pharmacies, whereby we will have to wait and see as to what would be the notification given out by the Government of India with regards to regulation of e-pharmacies. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 12. Now what this article talks about is a recent verdict given out by the International Court of Justice with regards to the Chagos Island, whereby the Chagos Island has been claimed by Mauritius but is currently under the control of United Kingdom. Now the first thing that you need to understand is the location of the Chagos archipelago. Now Mauritius is a country which is located in the Indian Ocean, and the Chagos archipelago is located between Mauritius and the southern tip of India in the Indian Ocean. And it is within this Chagos archipelago that it contains an important island called Diego Garcia. However, we're going to understand about Diego Garcia later on within this section. And looking at the last image, the Chagos archipelago is bordered by Seychelles, the islands of Maldives, and the southern tip of India. Now what had happened was that Mauritius got its independence from the United Kingdom, and Mauritius got its independence from the United Kingdom in 1968. However, prior to its independence, Mauritius and the United Kingdom signed an agreement in 1965, and under this agreement, Mauritius had agreed to let go of the Chagos archipelago and hand it over to United Kingdom, whereby Mauritius had feared that if it did not agree to the demands of the United Kingdom to hand over the Chagos archipelago, then the United Kingdom would not grant it independence. And what had happened afterwards was that Mauritius got its independence, and what United Kingdom did was that there were around 1500 people that were living in the Chagos Island. But United Kingdom evacuated the complete island and transferred around 1500 people who were living in the Chagos island to the islands of Mauritius. And the reason the United Kingdom transferred the complete population of the Chagos island because it had leased the Diego Garcia island of Chagos to the United States, whereby the United States had formed its Indian Ocean military base in the Diego Garcia island, which was a part of the Chagos archipelago. However, what has happened now is that Mauritius introduced a resolution within the United Nations General Assembly in 2017, and the United Nations General Assembly also adopted this resolution, which was provided by Mauritius. Whereby this resolution by Mauritius had asked the International Court of Justice to give its advisory opinion as to whether UK was violating international law by still keeping the Chagos island and not handing it back over to Mauritius. And apart from this, the International Court of Justice was also looking as to whether UK had the right to take away the Chagos archipelago from Mauritius at the time of independence and also evacuating its complete 1500 citizens. Now what has happened, as shown in today's article, is that International Court of Justice has given its advisory opinion and has said that Britain has an obligation to end its administration of the Chagos archipelago. And it is within that context that the International Court of Justice has said that Britain should hand over the Chagos archipelago to Mauritius and thereby finishing the process of decolonization of Mauritius, whereby it has been considered that the continued occupation of the Chagos archipelago by the United Kingdom is a form of colonialism, and UK should hand over the Chagos archipelago back to Mauritius so as to complete the whole process of decolonization of Mauritius. Now, the reason as to why the International Court of Justice has said that British should leave its occupation of the Chagos archipelago because it has not been based on the freely expressed and genuine will of the people who had lived in the Chagos archipelago. However, a more contentious issue which has been raised by the International Court of Justice is that the original agreement, which was signed between UK and Mauritius in 1965, did not allow for any form of third party involvement in the territory of Chagos archipelago. Now, this has also raised concern as to whether UK had the right to lease out the Diego Garcia island to the United States. And thereby, this advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice has raised concerns as to whether the military base of the United States in the Diego Garcia island is in accordance with international law or not. However, you have to understand that this verdict given out by the International Court of Justice is only an advisory opinion, and therefore this advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice is not binding on the United Kingdom. Now, apart from this, what you need to also understand is what is India's role within the Chagos archipelago dispute. Now, India has mainly supported Mauritius in the Chagos archipelago dispute, whereby India also voted in favor of the resolution which was introduced by Mauritius with regards to Chagos archipelago. However, the main geopolitical aspect that India desires from the Chagos archipelago dispute is that India is in the process to convince Mauritius so as to allow a long-term lease to the United States for the Diego Garcia island. Whereby what India wants is that the United Kingdom should hand over the Chagos archipelago to Mauritius. And after the United Kingdom has handed over the Chagos archipelago to Mauritius, Mauritius should give a 100-year lease to the United States to continue its military base in the Diego Garcia island. And the main reason as to why India wants Mauritius to give a long term lease to the United States to continue with its military base in Diego Garcia island is that India wants the continued presence of the United States in the Indian Ocean region, whereby this continued presence of the United States in the Indian Ocean region would balance the growing presence of China within the Indian Ocean region. So now hopefully with this you have understood the dispute with regards to Chagos Archipelago Islands. However, you have to understand that this news is currently in transition. We will have to wait and see on how the Chagos Archipelago dispute moves forward with regards to Mauritius and United Kingdom. Now, this Chagos Archipelago dispute is very important with regards to your upcoming prelims examination of 2019, whereby it is an important current event of international importance, whereby you already understand the current event with regards to the verdict of the International Court of Justice, and similarly, you also understand the international importance of the Chagos Island and in particular of Diego Garcia. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 1. Now what this article talks about is the recently opened War Memorial. Now we're going to understand some facts about the War Memorial from the perspective of your upcoming prelims examination of 2019 within the subject section Current Events of National Importance. Now this National War Memorial has been constructed near India Gate in New Delhi, whereby this war memorial is a tribute to all of those soldiers who had laid down their life while defending India. Whereby this National War Memorial highlights the various wars and operations that India has fought in the post-independence era. Apart from this, the National War Memorial also pays tribute to all of those soldiers who had lost their lives in peacekeeping missions and in counterinsurgency operations. Now, with regards to the architecture of the National War Memorial, there are four aspects that you need to know, whereby the National War Memorial consists of four concentric circles, whereby the first circle is of the Amar Chakra, whereby it is the innermost circle of the National War Memorial, and it has been topped with the bronze lion capital. And when we say the bronze lion capital, it basically means the Ashok Chakra. And apart from this Amar Chakra also has an internal flame which has been lit. Now there's one significant difference that you need to understand. And this is the difference between the Amar Jawan Jyoti and the Amar Chakra Jyoti. Whereby the Amar Jawan Jyoti was built in 1972 to commemorate the soldiers who were killed in the 1971 war. And this Amar Jawan Jyoti has been built in India Gate, while the Amar Chakra Jyoti has been built in the National War Memorial. The second main concentric circle is the Virta Chakra, whereby it has six bronze murals which are depicting six major battles which the Indian soldiers have fought, whereby it includes the Battle of Gangasagar which was fought in 1971, the Battle of Longewala which was fought in 1971, the Battle of Tithewal which was fought in 1947, the Battle of Razangla which was fought between India and China in 1962, Operation Meghtooth, which was launched to capture the Siachen Glacier in 1984, and Operation Trident, which was undertaken by the Indian Navy in 1971. The next main concentric circle is the Tyag Chakra, whereby this Tyag Chakra commemorates all those soldiers who have lost their lives in major wars and operations, whereby it includes the 1971 war, the 1962 war between India and China, the 1965 Pakistan war, the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War. Apart from this, it also includes Operation Pavan, in which the Indian peacekeeping force was sent to Sri Lanka. Apart from this, it also includes the 1999 Kargil War, Operation Meghtooth, and Operation Rakshak, whereby Operation Rakshak was a special operations conducted in Jammu and Kashmir. And the fourth and the last concentric circle in the National War Memorial is the Raksha Chakra, whereby the Raksha Chakra consists of a row of trees which symbolize soldiers who ensure the territorial integrity of India. Now the last aspect that you need to remember with regards to the National War Memorial is the Param Yodha Sthal, whereby it includes over 21 bronze statues of individuals who have won the Param Veer Chakra. Now these are the main facts that you need to remember about the National War Memorial with regards to your upcoming prelims examination of 2019 within the section Current Events of National Importance. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 13. Now the main context of this article was that the Reserve Bank of India had proposed that from 1st of April 2019, banks would be required to use external benchmarks to link their interest rate, whereby this use of external benchmarks to link their interest rate would replace the present system of internal benchmarks which are used by banks to link their interest rates. Now this system of internal benchmarks was introduced by the Reserve Bank of India on 1st of April 2016, whereby it had introduced the marginal cost of funds based lending rate, or what is called MCLR, whereby this MCLR was a reference rate which was used by banks to fix their interest rates. And the main structure through which the banks decided as to what would be the rate under MCLR depended upon various factors such as the fixed deposit rate, source of funds, and the savings rate. However, there were two main problems with the functioning of the MCLR rate to be used as internal benchmarks to link the interest rate by the banks. Firstly, what would happen was that the Reserve Bank of India would reduce the policy rates for the banks of India. However, what would often happen is that the banks would not pass on this cut in the rates by the Reserve Bank of India to the various borrowers. And apart from this, the second main problem with the MCLR rate that it was based on factors such as the fixed deposit rate, source of funds, and the savings rate, and all of these factors were decided by the banks themselves. And therefore it was considered that the structure in which the MCLR rate was being set up by banks was opaque in nature. However, you have to understand that MCLR rate was an internal benchmark in itself, and therefore it only depended on the various internal factors of the bank, such as the fixed deposit rate, source of funds, and the savings rate. But what this led to was that the system was opaque. Whereby, as an example, let us consider home loans, whereby what was happening was that banks were giving different interest rate for home loans to different individuals. So if a person who had a high credit score may be paying more for as an interest rate on home loan than a person who has a low credit score. And this became a problem for individuals like you and me who were taking loans from banks, whether they did not know as to whether they were being given a good rate by the bank or not. And it was because of this internal nature on which the MCLR rate was being set up that the RBI has decided to replace this internal benchmark of MCLR rate to an external benchmark. Now, what is happening now is that the internal benchmarking rate based on MLCR is being replaced by a new external benchmarking system, whereby what the Reserve Bank of India has said that banks will now have to link their lending rates or their interest rate with the following four options. The first option being the RBI repo rate, the second option being the 91-day Treasury bill yield, the third option being the 182-day Treasury bill yield, and the fourth option being any other benchmark market interest rate which has been produced by the Financial Benchmarks India Private Limited. Now, the main reason this external benchmarking has been introduced by the Reserve Bank of India is to make the system on which the banks are setting up their interest rate more transparent, whereby under this procedure every borrower will know as to what should be the interest rate of that bank. And apart from this, the borrower would also know the profit margin which is being decided by the bank. Whereby, let's say for an example, State Bank of India has benchmarked its interest rate with the repo rate. So if the repo rate currently is 4%, then you should know that SBI has to benchmark its interest rate to also 4%. But if State Bank of India is charging you 8% for a home loan, then you would know that State Bank of India is making a profit of 4%. And similarly, if Punjab National Bank has also benchmarked its interest rate with the repo rate at 4%, but it is charging an interest rate for home loan at 7%. And therefore, you would know that Punjab National Bank is making a profit of 3% from you. And this open system of external benchmarking will help borrowers like you and me to compare the various interest rates which have been provided by banks on various loans. And thereby, through this procedure, the system through which banks are setting up their interest rate would become more transparent. Now, it is within this context that the article is highlighting that most of the banks in India are probably going to set up repo rate as their external benchmark. However, you still have to understand that this external benchmarking system would begin from 1st of April 2019, and therefore it should be considered that this news is in transition. But hopefully you've understood the difference between the earlier internal benchmarking system and the proposed external benchmarking system. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 7. Now what this article talks about is the El Nino effect, whereby what this article is highlighting is that the probability of the El Nino effect is very low. And because the El Nino effect is linked to poor monsoon within India, a low probability of the El Nino effect would also mean that there is a low chance of a drought within India in 2019. And it is within that regard that the Indian Meteorological Department has also said that it is very unlikely there would be a strong El Nino effect this year. However, with regards to this, the Indian Meteorological Department or IMD has asked to wait till 30th of March, whereby it is after 30th of March it would be definite to say as to whether there would be a strong or a weak El Nino effect and whether it would affect the monsoon within India. Now what you need to understand from this article is about the El Nino effect. And as you can already see, the El Nino effect was covered in the DNS video of 11th of September, whereby the El Nino effect in the DNS video of 11th of September has been explained with the help of the NCERT book. And every point which has been highlighted in the NCERT book with regards to the El Nino effect has been explained with the help of visual representation. And therefore what you can do is watch the DNS video of 11th of September, whose link is given in the description section given below, to understand about the El Nino effect. And therefore now with this, let us move on to the next section. Now there are two questions for practice, whereby question 1 reads, which of the following islands in the Indian Ocean are correctly matched with their governing country? Whereby the first option is Diego Garcia and the country is Mauritius. The second option is Reunion Island and the country option is France. The third island is the Assumption Island and the country option is Seychelles. And the fourth island is the Agaliga Island, and the country option is Maldives. And you have to select which of the following islands in the Indian Ocean are correctly matched with their respective governing country. While question 2 reads, which of the following are external benchmark options which have been provided by the Reserve Bank of India to banks? Wherein the first option is the repurchase rate and the second option is the 91-day treasury bill yield. And what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now the correct answer to question number 1 is C, 2 and 3, whereby the governing country of the Diego Garcia is not Mauritius, whereas the governing country of the Reunion Island is France, while the governing country of Assumption Island is Seychelles, while with regards to the fourth option, Agaliga Island is currently governed by Mauritius. And therefore with regards to this, only option 2 and 3 are correct, whereby Reunion Island is in France and Assumption Island is in Seychelles. While with regards to question number 2, the correct answer is C, both 1 and 2, whereby the repurchase rate, or what is known as the repo rate, and the 91-day treasury bill yield are both external benchmark options which has been provided by the Reserve Bank of India. Now there are 2 more questions for your practice, whereby question 3 reads, which of the following statements is correct with regards to the El Nino effect? Whereby the first statement reads, it refers to a half to 1 degree rise in temperatures in the central equatorial Pacific. The second statement reads, it is linked to a reduction in rains over key monsoon belts. Now question 4 reads, which of the following are correctly matched? Whereby it gives a list of monuments and the soldiers that it commemorates. Wherein the first option, the monument given is India Gate, and the soldiers that it commemorates are from the First World War. Within the second option, the monument given is Gateway of India, and the soldiers that it commemorates is the Anglo-Maratha War. And within the third and the last option, the monument which is given is the Dras War Memorial, and it commemorates the soldiers of the Kargil War. And what you have to do is select the correct answer based on which of the following are correctly matched. And as you already understand, pause this video, solve both of these questions, and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now the correct answer to question number 3 is C, both 1 and 2. Whereby in simple terms, the El Nino effect does refer to a half to 1 degree rise in temperatures in the central equatorial Pacific, and it is linked to a reduction in rains over key monsoon belts, including India. And with regards to question number 4, the correct answer is B, 1 and 3, whereby with regards to the second option, the Gateway of India was built in Mumbai as a means to commemorate the coming of the British King George V and the British Queen Mary, who had come to India in 1911.
And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.